Listen, most people think communication is about having the perfect words, the perfect vocabulary, the perfect accent, but the truth, the fastest way to improve your communication has nothing to do with your tongue, and everything to do with your mindset. People don't listen to your words, they listen to your energy, your presence, your certainty, your intention, and if your inner world is shaky, your outer communication will always expose you. So today, I'm going to break down the real path, the fastest path to becoming someone people listen to, respect, and remember. Clarity is the foundation of powerful communication, and most people never realize how deeply their inner world controls the way their outer voice shows up. When you're unclear about who you are, what you feel, and what you want to express, your words come out shaky, scattered, and inconsistent. You try to sound confident, but your energy exposes your confusion. You try to speak with authority, but your tone betrays your uncertainty. That's why improving communication never starts with vocabulary, grammar, or fancy expressions. It starts with you. Because if you don't understand yourself, the world will never understand you. Think about it. Every time you open your mouth, you're not just communicating information. You're communicating your state of mind. Your words might say one thing, but your energy says everything. If you speak from a place of doubt, people feel the doubt. If you speak from a place of fear, people sense the fear. If you speak from a place of insecurity, people notice the insecurity even if they don't know exactly what it is. And that's why clarity is the fastest, strongest, and most unbreakable path to elevating how you communicate. When your inner world is scattered, your communication becomes a reflection of that chaos. But once your inner world becomes clear, your speech naturally becomes powerful without you forcing it. A clear mind produces clear words. A confident heart produces confident expression. You don't have to pretend or perform. You just speak, and people feel the certainty behind your voice. Self-clarity means understanding your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions, and your purpose in any moment of communication. Before you speak, ask yourself, what am I truly trying to say here? What is the message behind my words? What is the emotion behind my message? When you get real with yourself internally, your external communication automatically sharpens. You stop rambling, you stop over-explaining, you stop trying too hard to impress. Your delivery becomes clean, intentional, and impactful. People think communication is about speaking better, but communication is actually about thinking better. If your thoughts are jumbled, your speech will be jumbled. If your emotions are unresolved, your tone will be unstable. You cannot hide your inner world for long. Your communication will always reveal it. That's why the most powerful communicators don't focus on sounding smart. They focus on being grounded. They take a moment before they speak. They breathe. They align themselves. They decide what matters most in the moment. And then they speak from a place of conviction, not confusion. Self-clarity also builds emotional control. Most people communicate reactively. They speak from frustration, insecurity, ego, fear of judgment, or the need to prove themselves. This leads to arguments, misunderstandings, and miscommunication. But when you're clear on who you are and what you stand for, nobody can pull you into emotional chaos. You communicate calmly, confidently, and consciously. You don't raise your voice because you don't need to. You don't talk in circles because you don't have to. You don't force your point because you already understand it deeply within yourself, and people feel that. They feel the stability in your tone. They feel the certainty in your energy. They trust your words not because you speak loudly, but because you speak from a place of self-awareness. That's the power of self-clarity. It makes your communication magnetic. It makes people want to listen without you demanding it. You also become a better listener when you have self-clarity. Most people listen to respond, not to understand. They hear someone speaking, but their mind is busy planning a reaction, defending themselves, or proving a point. This happens because they are not internally settled. But when you are clear within yourself, you don't need to win the conversation. You don't need to be right. You don't need to dominate. You simply listen with presence. Your clarity gives you patience. Your self-awareness gives you openness. Your stability gives you the ability to understand before trying to be understood. And once you operate from this space, your relationships change, your influence grows, your impact strengthens. You become someone whose words carry weight, not because you speak more, but because you speak with intention. You communicate like someone who knows themselves, someone who respects their own thoughts, someone who chooses their words instead of spilling them. Self-clarity isn't about being perfect, it's about being honest with yourself. It's about knowing your triggers, your patterns, your emotions, and your purpose in any conversation. When you understand yourself, you understand how to communicate with the world. When you are clear inside, your message becomes impossible to ignore. Because the truth is simple. When you master your inner voice, your outer voice becomes unstoppable. Most people think powerful communication comes from speaking more, speaking louder, or speaking faster. But the real power, the kind that makes people stop, listen, and feel your presence, comes from something far quieter: the pause, the moment of silence between your words, the breath you take before you make your point. The space that holds your message, gives it weight, and forces the world to lean in. The pause is not emptiness. The pause is authority. When you speak without pausing, your words lose impact. They blur together. They become noise instead of meaning. People tune out because you're giving them no space to absorb what you're saying. But when you pause at the right moment, everything changes. Your tone deepens. Your message lands. Your presence grows. You stop sounding like you're chasing your thoughts, and you start sounding like someone who owns every second of the conversation. The truth is, weak communicators are afraid of silence. They think silence means they're losing control. They think if they stop speaking, the other person will stop listening. But strong communicators understand something different. Silence is a tool. Silence is leverage. Silence is influence. When you pause, you show the world that you're not desperate to be heard. You expect to be heard, and that expectation makes people pay attention. The pause gives you time to think. It gives your message room to breathe. It gives the listener a chance to understand not just your words, but your intention. Without pauses, communication becomes a race. With pauses, it becomes art. Think about the most impactful people you've ever listened to. They don't rush. They don't cram every second with words. They speak slowly, intentionally, and with space. Why? Because they know the pause builds anticipation. It builds tension. It builds authority. When you pause before your main point, people lean forward. When you pause after your main point, people sit with it. They absorb it. They remember it. The pause also reveals confidence. Anyone can talk non-stop, but it takes real control to stop talking and remain calm. Most people hate silence because silence exposes their insecurity. When you pause, you show that you're not rushed. You're not anxious. You're not unsure. You're choosing your moment. You're guiding the energy of the conversation instead of reacting to it. And there is something magnetic about a person who can hold silence. It shows emotional stability. It shows self-awareness. It shows dominance. Not aggression, but presence. When you pause, you give the impression of someone who thinks before they speak, someone whose words matter, someone who doesn't waste breath. That's the kind of communication people respect. Pausing also helps manage emotional situations. When someone tries to provoke you, silence becomes your shield. Instead of reacting impulsively, you pause. You breathe, you let the heat drop, you respond with clarity, not chaos. The pause protects your power. It stops you from saying things you'll regret. It keeps you calm when others lose control. That's emotional intelligence. That's real strength, and the pause sharpens your thoughts. Your mind moves faster than your mouth, and when you speak without stopping, your mouth begins to chase your mind. That's why people ramble, repeat themselves, or sound uncertain. But when you pause, your message organizes itself. Your brain catches up. Your delivery becomes cleaner, sharper, more precise. The world starts hearing your intention instead of your confusion. The pause also increases the emotional impact of your words. When you say something meaningful and then pause, you give people space to feel it. The pause lets your message hit their heart, not just their ears. It's the moment where your words stop being sound and start becoming truth. Great communicators don't fear silence. They use it. They know when to breathe. They know when to break. They know when to let their message sit in the air, and that control makes people trust them more. It makes people feel safe around them. It makes their words feel grounded. Pausing is not about slowing down your speech. It's about taking ownership of it. It's about speaking with presence, not pressure. It's about valuing your message enough to deliver it with precision. When you pause, you're telling the world, my words have weight, my thoughts have direction, my presence has intention. If you want to elevate your communication, start practicing the pause. In daily conversations, in serious discussions, even when speaking to yourself, let silence become your partner, not your enemy. Because once you master the pause, your voice becomes stronger, your message becomes deeper, and your impact becomes undeniable. People won't just hear you, they'll feel you, and that is where true communication begins. Most people believe communication is about talking, about expressing, explaining, convincing, debating. But the truth is, the most powerful communicators, leaders, and influencers speak far less than everyone else. They understand that real power is not in speaking more, it's in listening more. Listening 70% and speaking only 30% is not just a strategy. It's a mindset, a discipline, a form of self-control that separates those who merely make noise from those who truly create impact. Listening is not the absence of speaking. Listening is presence, listening is awareness, listening is respect. When you listen deeply, intentionally, and without interruption, you don't just hear someone's words. You understand their world. You understand their emotions, their fears, their motives, and their message. Most people never experience this kind of listening, which is why they are constantly misunderstood and constantly misunderstanding others. When you listen 70%, you gain the advantage. You collect information. You read energy, you observe patterns, you learn people's intentions before they even finish their sentences, and when you finally speak, when your 30% comes, it lands with precision, it carries clarity. It carries authority because your words are based on understanding, not assumption. Weak communicators rush to talk, they interrupt, they dominate the conversation, they respond before they understand. They think speaking more makes them look strong, but in reality, it exposes their insecurity. It shows they're uncomfortable with silence. It shows they're more focused on being heard than understanding what's actually happening. Strong communicators do the opposite. They listen more because they're not threatened by someone else's voice. They don't rush to prove themselves. They don't fear losing control of the conversation. They know that listening gives them more control than talking ever could. When you listen, you guide the direction without forcing anything. You make the other person feel valued, and in doing so, you create influence without demanding it. Listening is also a mirror of emotional intelligence. When you listen, you're not just gathering information. You're building connection. People trust those who listen to them. People open up to those who make them feel understood. People follow those who take the time to hear them without judgment. Listening creates loyalty. Listening builds relationships that speaking alone never could. And the 70/30 rule prevents unnecessary conflict. When you listen more, you respond with understanding instead of reacting with ego. You avoid saying things you'll regret. You avoid miscommunication. You avoid arguments that come from not allowing the other person to express themselves fully. Most conflicts don't come from disagreement. They come from people not feeling heard. When you let someone express themselves, their defensiveness drops, their aggression softens, their walls come down. Because being heard is a basic human need, listening also protects your energy. When you speak less, you choose your words carefully. You stop giving away your power through impulsive reactions. You stop oversharing. You stop explaining yourself to people who aren't worthy of your explanation. Silence becomes your strength, not your weakness. You start speaking only when your words have purpose, not when your emotions demand release. Listening 70% also makes your 30% far more impactful. When you finally speak, people pay attention. Why? Because you've shown them you value their thoughts. You've shown them you're grounded. You've shown them you're intentional. When someone who listens deeply finally speaks, their words carry weight. Their message hits harder because it's not constant noise. It's a rare signal. Listening is also how you learn. Every conversation becomes a classroom. Every person becomes a teacher. Every moment becomes an opportunity to grow. You don't learn when you speak. You learn when you stay quiet, and the more you learn, the smarter you become. The smarter you become, the more powerful your communication becomes. This 70/30 approach even transforms how you communicate with yourself. When you quiet your mind, when you stop reacting, when you stop filling every mental space with endless thoughts, you begin to hear your own truth. You understand your desires, your fears, your strengths, your purpose. That inner listening sharpens your intuition, and intuition makes your outer communication more authentic, more confident, more grounded. Listening is not weakness. Listening is not passiveness. Listening is the highest form of strength because it shows restraint, control, and confidence. Someone who feels insecure talks non-stop. Someone who knows their worth listens first and speaks second. When you train yourself to listen 70% and speak only 30%, your communication evolves. Your relationships deepen. Your influence expands. Your understanding sharpens, and your voice, though used less, begins to carry more power than ever before. Because the world doesn't respect noise, the world respects understanding, the world respects presence, the world respects the person who speaks less, but says more words without emotion are empty. They may reach someone's ears, but they never reach their heart. The difference between someone who gets ignored and someone who gets remembered is not the vocabulary they use, it's the emotional weight behind their message. People don't connect with perfectly structured sentences. They connect with feeling, with authenticity, with the truth that vibrates underneath your words. When you speak, the emotion behind your voice is what determines whether someone forgets you in seconds or carries your message with them for years. Most people speak like they're reading from a script. Their tone is flat, their delivery is mechanical, and their words have no energy, no intention, no heartbeat. They say the right things, but something always feels missing, and that something is emotion. It's the depth, it's the conviction, it's the fire. When you remove emotion from your communication, you remove your humanity from it. But when you add emotion, even simple words become powerful. Even short phrases carry impact. Even silence becomes meaningful. Emotional weight doesn't mean being loud. It doesn't mean being dramatic. It doesn't mean overwhelming people with intensity. Emotional weight means being connected to what you're saying. It means you feel your message before you deliver it. It means your tone aligns with your intention. When you speak with emotional weight, your energy changes, your voice slows down, your message becomes alive. People can feel that you're not just talking, you're expressing something real. You can hear the difference instantly. Someone who speaks without emotional weight sounds uncertain, disconnected, and forgettable. Someone who speaks with emotional weight sounds grounded, intentional, and compelling. Their words fill the room even if they're whispering. Their message penetrates even if it's short. Why? Because emotion amplifies impact. Emotion gives your words shape, direction, and depth. Emotion is the bridge between your thoughts and someone else's understanding. When you speak with emotional weight, you're not just transferring information, you're transferring your truth. You're allowing people to experience what you experienced, feel what you feel, and understand what matters to you. That's why people follow leaders who speak from their heart, not from a script. That's why a simple story told with sincerity can be more powerful than a long lecture filled with impressive words. People can sense when you're detached. They can sense when your voice doesn't match your message. They can sense when you're pretending, performing, or forcing a tone. But they can also sense when you're present, when you're grounded, when your words come from a place of honesty. Humans are wired to feel authenticity. You cannot fake emotional weight. You can only cultivate it through genuine connection to what you're saying. To speak with emotional weight, you have to slow down, you have to breathe, you have to feel the meaning of your words before they leave your mouth. Too many people speak fast because they are nervous, insecure, or disconnected from their message. When you rush, you flatten your emotion, but when you slow down, you allow your tone to rise and fall naturally. You give your message space to carry emotion. You give the listener time to absorb your energy. You also need clarity. Emotional weight comes from knowing exactly why your message matters. When you understand the purpose behind your words, the emotion appears automatically. You don't have to force it, it flows. Purpose gives emotion direction. Emotion gives purpose impact. Together, they make your communication unforgettable. Think about moments when someone's words moved you, really moved you. It was never just the words, it was the emotion behind the words, it was the pause they took, the tone they used, the honesty in their voice, the conviction that made you stop and feel something. That's emotional weight. And it's available to anyone who is willing to speak from the inside out. Emotional weight also demands courage. You must be willing to express your truth even when it feels vulnerable. Most people hide their emotion because they fear judgment. But when you hide your emotion, you hide your power. Emotion doesn't make you weak. Emotion makes your message human. It makes you relatable. It makes you real, and realness is rare. Rare things hold value. When you speak with emotional weight, you command attention without trying. You influence without forcing. You inspire without effort. Your presence grows not because you talk more, but because your message carries depth. Emotion is the signature of authenticity, and authenticity is the currency of influence. Once you master speaking with emotional weight, every conversation changes. People listen differently. They respond differently. They remember you differently, because words inform, but emotion transforms. Words reach the mind, emotion reaches the soul, and people never forget the person who speaks to their soul. Talent is overrated. It's the most overhyped excuse people use to justify why they don't improve, why they don't grow, why they don't succeed. Talent might give you a head start, but consistency is what decides who finishes strong. Consistency is the great equalizer. The person who shows up every day, even imperfectly, will always outperform the person who shows up only when they feel motivated or gifted. Talent is a spark, but consistency is the fire that burns long after talent gets tired. People love the idea of being naturally good at something. They want to believe that success comes from some kind of magic, some natural gift, something you're born with. It's comforting, because if success is only about talent, then they don't have to take responsibility for their lack of progress. They can sit back and say, I'm just not good at it, instead of admitting the truth. I never stayed consistent with it. That truth hurts, but it's the truth that sets you free. Consistency is not glamorous. It's not exciting. It's not something you can show off on social media. It's the quiet work done when no one is watching. It's the small steps repeated day after day until mastery becomes inevitable. You don't improve because you're gifted. You improve because you repeat, you practice, you refine, you evolve. People overestimate talent and underestimate repetition. But repetition is what builds skill, shapes identity, and transforms you into someone unstoppable. Those who rely on talent peak early. They shine quickly but fade quickly because they never built the discipline to sustain their shine. They get used to being naturally good, so the moment they face difficulty, they break, they quit, they fold under pressure, but those who rely on consistency grow stronger with every challenge. Every failure becomes fuel. Every setback becomes training. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity to build character. That's why consistent people last longer. They have depth, resilience, and discipline forged through daily practice. Consistency is also a mindset. It means showing up regardless of your mood. It means doing the work even when you don't feel motivated. Motivation comes and goes, but discipline stays. The people who excel aren't the ones who feel inspired every day. They're the ones who show up even when they don't feel like it. That's the difference. That's what separates those who dream from those who achieve. And here's the truth most people avoid. Consistency is uncomfortable. It forces you to confront your excuses. It challenges your laziness. It exposes your patterns. When you choose consistency over talent, you take control of your growth. You stop waiting for the perfect moment and start building momentum. You stop depending on moods and start depending on habits. And habits created through consistency always outperform talent that isn't maintained. Consistency compounds. It may feel slow in the beginning, like nothing is changing, but over time those small steps become massive leaps. Just like drops of water can carve stone, small consistent actions can carve a new version of you. The person you become after a year of consistency will be unrecognizable compared to the person you were when you started. That transformation doesn't happen through talent. It happens through discipline. Consistency also builds confidence. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you prove to your mind that you can trust yourself. Confidence doesn't come from talent. It comes from evidence, the evidence of your own actions. When you show up again and again, your mind starts believing, I can do this. And that belief becomes your power. Talent might impress people, but consistency impresses your own soul. It strengthens your identity. It builds your self-worth, and when it comes to communication, skill, building, success, or personal development, consistency will always be the key. You don't become a great communicator by speaking once. You don't become confident by reading a single book. You don't change your life through one moment. You change it through consistency in many moments. Every day you show up, you get one step closer. Every day you repeat, you get sharper. Every day you practice, you get stronger. Talent may open the door, but consistency keeps the door open long enough for you to walk through it. Talent may give you potential, but consistency turns that potential into reality. Talent may be a blessing, but consistency is a choice available to anyone willing to commit. In the end, the world doesn't reward the most talented. The world rewards the most consistent, the ones who stayed when others quit, the ones who pushed when others got tired, the ones who repeated the work until mastery became their identity. Because consistency isn't just what you do, it's who you become. And when you become the kind of person who shows up every day, nothing in this world can stop you, so remember. You don't need fancy words, you don't need perfect English, you don't need to sound like anybody else. You only need 3 things: clarity, presence, emotion. Start applying this today. Because the moment your communication improves, your relationships improve, your opportunities improve, your entire life improves, and trust me, the fastest way to transform your world is to transform the way you speak into it.